Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This is episode 7 of BroTalk, open dialogues about money, mind, and life. Thank you guys so much. Please like this video, share it with your friends and family. Today we're going to talk about number 1, about happiness, how to achieve it. We're going to talk about the different perspectives. What is that formula to happiness? We're going to talk about being cruel. When is it appropriate for you or me to be cruel? When and why? And last but not least, about mercy and how can we actually develop it physically, but also mentally. So join us, join our conversation, guys. Okay. All right. So let's talk about mercy first. I know I mentioned in the introduction happiness, but let's go with mercy and we'll go up to happiness, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess I would ask you, Aaron, how can we, obviously everyone knows that being a merciful, compassionate person is a beautiful, great quality. Yeah. But in your case, I mean, I don't know if you want to, I know you're going to define it, but how can we develop, how can we start to become more of a merciful person within ourselves and our actions? Like, how's that possible?
Well, I believe one of the ways that we can acquire being merciful, especially, I mean, you can be merciful against animals as well, but we're just going to stick to people. Okay. Right? One way you could be merciful when it comes to people is like when you start to practice empathy. Okay. When you start to view other people's perspectives and to acknowledge their feelings. Also, when you start to be not forgetful, but like forgiving. In a sense, forgetful at the same time. But when you start to forgive others for maybe things that they've done to you, and let me start over.
Okay, it's fine. Okay. So you'll cut this part off, don't worry.
What's the other one? Hold on.
Is there a different question you'd rather me ask you?
No, that was a great question. Oh. I had it in my mind and then it just blanked out. Practice empathy, forgiveness. Okay.
You ready?
Sorry.
So we don't do the whole intro, just me starting.
Yeah, just starting.
Okay. So I think, so let's talk about mercy first. Okay. Because I think you got some good information that people can actually hear and that they can actually start to apply it. Right? So when it comes to mercy, we obviously know like it's a beautiful quality, being compassionate, and everyone wants it, and we should all be it, right? Yeah. But I think the harder question is not about how good it is, but the real question is how can a person, or how can you or me develop this quality that we all know it's so important, but how do we develop it within our personality? Like how do we ingrain it inside of us?
How do we make it a trait of ours?
Yes.
Okay, so I believe there are different ways to do it.
Okay.
Maybe a few ways to do it would be you start to practice empathy, right? When you start to view people's perspectives, acknowledge their feelings, when you're having a conversation one-on-one with people, that's when you start to practice some type of mercy, right? And that's how you start adhering that trait. Also, when you start to forgive others, right? Sometimes we all do mistakes. We're all human beings. And sometimes we don't mean what we do, especially like to that level, right? Yeah. So we can be merciful. And that's another way of practicing it. And we are acquiring that mercifulness into us, right? Also, second chances. Meaning, I know it has to do with like forgiveness.
It does, yes.
But meaning second chances is when you start to acknowledge the times that people were merciful to you. Because just like other people do mistakes, you do mistakes as well. So once you start to remember and acknowledge, hey, I did this towards this person, I did that towards that person, and these people had mercy for me. These people continue to still be my friends. They continue to hang out around me. They don't ever bring it up. They showed mercy with me. So when someone does something towards me, why can't I show some type of empathy? Why can't I be mercy with them as well?
Because I'm right and they're wrong.
What do you mean?
No, like it's like someone might say, because what you're saying is great, but I might say, well, I can't be like that with them because they're wrong and I'm right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That could be the case. But even in situations like that, I think you can still be merciful.
No, 100%. No, 100%.
Still be merciful, yes. Even when you're the right person.
Okay.
Right? And for example, there are good things and bad things when it comes to mercy, right? One of the few things that I was able to study a bit is how one of the good things about being merciful against others is it fosters reconciliation and healing. Meaning, so when you're able to forgive others and as what follows, be there for them, it encourages some type of better relationship build up, right? Also heal from what others have done towards you. And it encourages compassion as an overall, right? Because we understand that the action towards compassion is mercy. But as well, mercy also has bad things. And mercy could be bad when it's overused, right? Because it can enable bad behavior, right? Me as a superintendent, right? I lead a group of people in my building, and sometimes they might mess up. Sometimes they're not doing the right thing, right? Different examples, we could go for days. But if they're not doing the right thing, you could show some type of mercy, right? And help them out and be like, don't worry about it. I got it covered. This and that. But if you continue to be merciful again and again and again, and there's never a consequence, or there's never some type of area where like I should let you know that you have to grow in, then it could start to enable bad behavior. That person that works under me or whoever could be like, oh, this person continues to have mercy against me. It's always going to have mercy against me, or at least that's what this person has shown. So I could continue to fuck up, and I think I could get away with it. So that's the bad part of showing too much mercy towards somebody. Meaning, like, as an example, I don't want to skip into cruelty, but basically, like when a judge gives like a lighter sentence towards somebody, it's usually someone who's repentant. Right? Yeah. That's being merciful with them. But when it comes to someone who isn't repentant and they still tend to show mercy regardless, that's when the quality mercy could be used badly, because that will enable future bad behaviors. What do you think?
I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions. You said some interesting things. So you're basically saying that the people that you lead are not. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No. So you said some stuff that I want to just get your thoughts on. Maybe you have an opinion, or if not, you let me know. Okay. So I would say, first of all, I agree with everything. I agree with a lot of things you're saying here. Now, what if the person is like, yes, I know I need to forgive more because I need to show more mercy in different scenarios. But what if forgiving doesn't come naturally to them? Or let's say they're not the type of person that they can listen to other perspectives because they're so narrow-minded, right? But at least they can acknowledge, like, I'm narrow-minded, or like I am, or I don't forgive so easily, right? How can that person, they know they have to do that, okay? So if they know that, how can they build that mercifulness, or how can they put themselves in a better position where they can forgive more, or take other people's perspectives? Like, how have you done it, maybe? Or how have you seen other people do it? Or maybe, I don't know, maybe something you read or you heard. Like, how do you think someone else can do that? Because, you know, everyone knows we have to do that. But a lot of times people, they just can't do it. They can't separate themselves, you know?
I believe then there's something more towards that, right? Because that's kind of being a little bit more like stubborn, egocentric. Maybe, I don't know the right word would be, hard-headed, in a sense where, like, you have to understand whatever's done to you, you have to practice it as well, in a sense, meaning, like I mentioned before, if someone is able to show mercy against you, you being an imperfect person, what makes you not being able to do the same thing? Regardless, like, I get it, we all have negative experiences, and that sometimes impacts the way we are and the way we come about things. But only because you had this negative experience with a particular person doesn't mean that every experience you continue to have is going to be the same. So that's where you have to, like, learn how to separate, like, a bad experience I had, and that's why I've become the way I am, but that doesn't continue to apply to everyone else in a sense, right? With everyone else, you're going to continue to have different experiences. And like I said, if people are going to have empathy and be forgiving with you because you're not a perfect human being, then it would be kind of hypocritical for you not to do the opposite. Because then if you don't do the opposite, then people will never be merciful with you either. And that's when you start, I believe, if you don't start to show mercy towards others is when you start to develop maybe other bad qualities. And yeah, that's what basically would happen to someone who denies to show mercy continuously with others.
So you're basically saying, listen, you need to work on yourself. If you know you have that problem, right? Basically, you need to work on those inner qualities you have, because people have done it to you. So you need to reciprocate that. So start by working on yourself, however that means, either, going to see, I mean, I don't know. I don't think you would, I don't know, maybe going to see someone who knows you well and help you like develop those better qualities, maybe seeing a therapist, reading a book, right?
Well, yeah. Those are things that as well could help.
Okay. So you're saying, really, you want to build mercy? Very simple. You need to really self-reflect, see all your bad qualities that are related to this, get rid of them, and by default, your mercifulness is going to go up.
Yeah, by default.
Got you. Okay, 100% agree. It's also interesting. I just wanted to mention something, because I also wrote something about how to develop it. And I put a couple of things, and you tell me what you think about them. So the first one I put was, and you kind of mentioned this, is reframing negative thoughts about others by considering their struggle. You said, look at their perspectives, perspective taking. That's what you said, right? And I think if the person, right, so I think you have to do this in two ways. You need to reframe your negative thoughts pre and post. So even because like, the whole expression, you need to give the person the benefit of the doubt, right? The only way that works is you need to mentally think, okay, before I make a judgment call, or before I show mercy or not, or I start to judge them, let me have in the back of my head that, hey, maybe there's a lot more things happening here that I know or that I don't know. So that's before you talk to them, or before you get into it with them, you start to reframe your thoughts on the situation before, like pre, right? And so before you even speak to them or engage, you're like, okay, maybe I need to give them the benefit of the doubt. But maybe later on during the conversation, as you mentioned, that the people that work underneath you, sometimes you give them a leeway, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you are merciful with them, sometimes you're not. But you make that decision. It sounds like, you can correct me as we're going. It sounds like you decide what is that fine line between being merciful or not once you learn more information, or once you're in this situation, right?
I feel like it has a lot to do with like the history that you have with the person, right?
Explain more.
Meaning, because you mentioned the word benefit of the doubt, right?
Yes.
I believe naturally we tend to give more the benefit of the doubt towards somebody we trust, towards somebody we already know, right? Towards somebody that we already have history with. Especially if you have good history with that person. Oh, I know this person didn't mean to do that maliciously, or they must have just forgotten, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But when that history is reduced, or you tend to have bad history with a person, that benefit of the doubt isn't really applied so much. You know? So that's why I feel like it depends a lot on the history you have with that person to be able to give the benefit of the doubt.
So you're really saying is like this mercy thing and everything we're talking about, this really starts applying once you don't, either you have a bad history with them or you don't really know them so much, right?
Yeah. When you know somebody, you also have trust with them.
Yeah.
And that trust tends to overlook, especially if it's a good relationship, tends to overlook any bad potential behaviors or acts that someone did against you. Therefore, it's very easy to give the benefit of the doubt. But when it's a stranger or somebody that has done something to you constantly, is when you start to double think and really see if they deserve, in a sense, that benefit of the doubt / mercy, basically.
Like that new mercy that you're going to show towards them?
Yeah.
Or maybe like, like
if something's like repetitive, right?
Then maybe not.
So like that's why it depends. The history. I guess mercy has a lot to do with history as well.
I think we're starting to realize that now. Yeah. But that's what it seems like you're saying. So then I think the pre, and then obviously post.
Okay.
Right? Because obviously a person can like think to themselves, okay, I'm going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But then once you actually start talking to them, like, oh, screw this, screw everyone. I'm not giving any benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to be merciful because now I learned this and this. But as you mentioned, depending on history, depending on the situation and what you learned in the new situation. So then you also got to show mercy before and then after, right? So start to reframe your mindset about it. Then another a tactic is start to engage in physical acts of kindness or volunteer work to get the habit going. Right? 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗲, which you obviously know him, he talks about that to build a habit. Back in the day, they say 21 days, but now it's actually 66 days.
It's kind of worse.
Yeah, it takes a longer time.
It makes sense.
It makes sense. So not only because a lot of times I've also learned, and I'm realizing this as I'm talking to you, is a lot of times to build a habit, or to improve on a quality, which you want it to become a habit probably, it takes first of all a mindset change, but also there has to be an actual physical change. You have to do it actually. So I think if you start to volunteer, like let's say once a week or more consistently somewhere, or you start to give charity out more, or you go to your favorite organization, like let me help out, right? Whatever cause you want to help. Yeah. It also starts to do you start to what's the word? Metamorphosis? How you say that? A metamorphosis, right? An inner metamorphosis. Like you start to change physically and also mindset-wise. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is I've never tried this, but that cognitive behavioral therapy really helps with this, right? And I guess so. I think this is like a good formula. Reframe your mindset pre and post for mercy. Actually start to do physical actionable things, however you want to do it. And then I'm not telling people to go do CBT therapy, but I've heard it works. I guess one more question I wanted to ask you, and I wanted to mention one example, was about perspective taking. What are your thoughts on perspective taking? Because that could take a lot out of you emotionally and physically and logically, because it's not easy to take someone else's perspective, especially if you think that they're wrong.
Well, yeah. When it comes mentally, you definitely have to put a lot of thought into someone else's perspective or how they could view things, and how. Wait, what was your question?
So basically, I want to know what are your thoughts on perspective taking, or like how, like when you're in an argument, or like someone, that you work with, right? Right? Like, how do you show mercy by putting yourself in people's different perspectives? Like, how do you do that mentally or physically, right? Because as I mentioned, you mentioned this, and I also mentioned this, perspective taking or looking at things from their angle is a form of showing mercy.
Yes, it is.
And taking different perspectives, especially that are very different from yours, right? It could be very challenging for somebody. Yeah. Like imagine telling a Republican to take the Democratic side, or the Democrat, please take the Republican side. It could be very hard.
This could be interesting especially when you're, when you put a lot of thought into it, and you're trying to see other people's perspectives. Yeah. One way to doing it is like, or at least the first thing that clicked into my mind was like, sometimes you look at age, right? Okay. Meaning, if I'm seeing that one of my workers isn't as fast or isn't as efficient as others, or might be because of his age. He might be 3 times my age. He might be suffering disability that's limiting him to go as fast as he would want to go, right? So in a sense, when I'm debating I'm not debating with somebody, but if I'm trying to show some type of mercy, and without even speaking to the person, or sometimes even speaking to them as well, I could look at it and be like, okay, well, this person's age is playing into what's happening right now. Or if I'm talking to a younger person and I'm seeing that I'm giving them advice, or they've heard the same advice continuously, but they can continue to do the same mistakes, I could see from their perspective or be like, their age might be affecting it, because I remember when I was this age as well, I behaved the same way. That's looking at it from a similar perspective of when you were that age, right? What else would be a way?
Maybe a culture, maybe looking at their culture.
Right. Looking at their culture, if someone is able to be as open with you as well, and now this is a conversation mostly, when they give you a negative experience they went through, right? When someone is like, in a sense, vulnerable with you and able to explain something to you, then you can start to understand, oh, that's why they reacted this way. That's why they reacted that way. Or that's why they usually behave this way. Which sometimes put things into perspective, especially if you haven't gone through those things, you don't know the feeling. So I believe that's one of the things that causes or could help you have more mercy, especially like if they're giving you a negative impact or a negative experience in their life that impacted them that way, and you've never been through it. You would really have to like put into thought, how can that affect whatever negative thing they're doing at the moment for that requires you to show mercy to them. So I believe age and,
negative
experiences could be a way to, in a way, your perspective taking, you said?
Perspective taking.
Perspective taking others, people's perspective, and that's what's going to help you to show mercy. Those are the first two things that clicked to my mind.
No. I think it's it's so funny. It's like perspective taking, or like the whole thing is like, oh, I just got to take their perspective, and if I see it, if I put myself in their shoes, I'll understand. That is much easier said than done.
100%.
Much easier said than done. And I think if you consistently think about the age, the culture, there may be their negative experiences, if they open up to you, of course, maybe feedback from other people that they tell you, oh, this person went through this. And I think if you're an open-minded person and like, listen, life is complicated, and a lot of times we as humans make decisions based only on emotion, based on logic and emotion, or maybe we're forced to make a decision, or, if we have all these things in our mind and we realize that life is not black and white, and that people make decisions either forced or emotional mixed with logic, or just pure logical. If we look at it that way, we're like, all right, most likely this person went through something really bad, or there's a lot more to it, or they were forced to make this decision, but they're trying to hide it because they're insecure, or they're trying to hide it because they don't want to see as inferior, or they're trying to show something that they're not. Well, whatever the case is, I think it'll be much easier. And also just understanding that, listen, I'm here for peace, or I'm trying to, or let's say you have an agenda. I'm trying to advance my agenda. Am I going to advance my agenda if I'm not being open or being stubborn? My agenda is more important, maybe. So let me be merciful, because if the things were flipped, I definitely would want that. So something, let me bite my tongue a little bit, right?
Right.
And let me further my agenda. Like, I think sometimes you might have to bite your tongue a little bit, because you're like, things need to get done in the building.
Yeah.
So let me bite my tongue a little bit so things can get done and I don't get in trouble. But there's peace, no?
Right. You always want to try to aim for peace, and you have to view yourself from a different perspective as well, because sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want to give this person leeway because they're supposed to follow this regimen every single day while they're here. But then you start looking at your own regimen or your own agenda. Are you actually like doing 100% of what you're supposed to be doing? Is there any flaw into it? Do you have any like skeletons in the closet? I'm not saying it's a good thing to have skeletons in the closet, but you could potentially have skeletons in the closet, right? And that's more of it's more beneficial for me to show mercy at this moment than just to be in like in a non-biased way showing mercy or not.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to like see, oh, I'm not the perfect dude either, or I've done this as well. I can show you some type of mercy. Just don't let it happen again. And that can apply at work. That can apply with kids, with friends. It can apply everywhere. It just, you have to know when to use it, especially when it comes to repentant people.
Gotcha. Okay. Now it's funny because we're talking about how great mercy is, but you mentioned very early on, and I want to go back to that example you mentioned about that being merciful can also be bad, right? And you mentioned, did I get it right? Like that merciful has a bad side to it. Or
if you overuse it, yeah.
You overuse it, and then you were mixing it with cruelty. So I want to know like your thoughts on that and about cruelty.
So it has a lot to do with the example I gave earlier, right? So if you're a criminal, happen to say you kidnap somebody, right? Okay. Now you're in front of a judge and you are showing some type of repentance. That judge could potentially, depending on your history as well, just like mercy has a lot to do with history. Depending on your history, that judge could have some type of mercy on you, right? Because they give you a chance to speak. They give you a chance to potentially apologize, or you have a chance to say a few words. And depending on what you say, depending on the sentence I'm going to give you for the future, right? But it can be bad when you overuse it, and that's how cruelty can sometimes be good as well. Okay. Meaning, and this is where we transition to the next topic, how cruelty could be good, right? So pertaining to that example, if that offender is not showing any type of repentance, or doesn't want to speak, or is laughing, or already has a history, you're already looking at their criminal record and seeing that they have the same history, continuous again and again and again, and it's been years, it hasn't changed, then that's when, unfortunately, cruelty could be necessary. Because this person hasn't learned through their own actions, or through other people's actions as well, because probably the people they've been around with, that whatever action they took to get them there, in this example, kidnapping, is not the right thing to do. But they continue to do it. So cruelty might have to be the answer, in a sense where, okay, you haven't learned the kind way, the nice way. I'm going to have to prolong your sentence. I'm going to have to give you a harsher sentence. Therefore, you can learn, meaning I'm giving you a consequence now, right? You have a bad history. You haven't learned. I'm going to prolong, and I'm going to give you 30 years without parole, right? So without even having a chance to get out, like you have to serve those 30 years. And maybe, unfortunately at that point, that's when that person learns. But that's like, because we see cruelty usually as like, it's a bad behavior, right? Is when you deliberately want to cause pain towards others. Correct. Right? But in this case, the judge doesn't deliberately, in a sense, through their own malicious judgments, want this person to suffer, but because of what they've caused towards others, I have to make good judgment based on that. Yes. And the good judgment that I can make based off that is being a bit cruel to you, because you haven't been merciful towards others. Yeah, you've been kidnapping. Or killing, or stealing, not acknowledging that other people work hard for that, or that's technically universally not the right thing to do. So the only way for you to learn is through cruelty. Right? Yeah. Just like something when we parent. Oh, you don't learn the good way, you ain't gonna have to learn the bad way. Yeah, gotta learn the hard way, baby. So then I believe that's when cruelty, in a sense, is necessary. I don't know what you think about that example. Or no, I think it's a great example. Yeah. I mean, we've probably seen those videos on YouTube where it's like they'll let the criminal speak. And sometimes the criminal will say some crazy stuff, or he was like, I'm sorry, forgive me. And you're right. I've seen some crazy things. I've seen some, we've seen crazy videos. And sometimes, but like you said, not always, but sometimes like that will touch the judge's heart, even though technically They still did it.
They did. Of course, they still did it. But a judge is supposed to be like not biased.
Yeah. You have to just view what
the law is,
the laws, and what the facts are,
and what the facts are. What is what you've done, right?
Right.
But you're right. Maybe sometimes the ending words, and he explains himself, it might soften the jury, because the jury are the people that decide if he's guilty or not. The judge just gives out the sentence.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I know what you mean.
So maybe you're right. Maybe it might soften it, right? But you're right. Sometimes people, they need to learn the most harshest way. But for the most part, I would say yes, cruelty is not a good thing. In this case, sometimes when it comes to the most extreme, or people who are not listening, or people who don't learn they don't learn with the lesser punishments the first couple times, then you got to be cruel. Like, all right, we got to give you the max.
Right.
And I even thought of two other examples of sports, which you're very into, and also organizational leadership, right? So let me paint you a simple example, and you tell me. Let's say a CEO. There's a CEO, and he realizes the only way this company is going to make it, I got to fire 50 people. There's 200 people that work for the company, let's say.
Okay.
But the only way, I got to cut out one department. And these 50, I got to fire them. And then we could save money, and we could stay afloat and continue the company and grow the company, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Now this is also interesting because, yes, you gave a definition of cruelty. You did, and I agree with that definition.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these types of scenarios, for someone, this might be cruel. If you're part of the 50 people, obviously, this is cruel.
Yeah, it's cruel. It's unfortunate. Yeah.
But from the other perspective, it's not cruelty. It's necessary, right? Is it cruel for maybe me to fire the 50 people, but I'm saving the company and I'm saving 150 other people's salary and benefits? So, like, again, it becomes...
It's slippery slope, because sometimes...
what is
the example I wrote is like, sometimes when you mistreat workers for personal gain, in a sense,
yes,
you're not mistreating them in your example, right? But you are getting a potential personal gain yourself, but also others.
Yeah, it's not just me.
Right. It's not just like a selfish thing, right? I'm firing these 50 people because I'm going to be earning 50 more K a year. But I'm not looking at the other 150 people that it's going to affect. And in this example, I need to fire the 50 people. This is the only way the company is going to continue growing. But I'm not only helping myself, but I'm helping the other 150 people that are working. So that's when, that's why I said it becomes a slippery slope, where like the person that gets fired could view it as cruel.
Obviously.
Selfish. Well, why would you do that?
I've been here forever. I've been here forever.
This amount of time. But while the CEO, the owner, is like, this is a business move. I have to do this. The only way to save my company, because if I don't save my company, then those 200 people get fired, and then I go bankrupt.
And I go bankrupt.
So, and then I will look more cruel because I wasn't, I guess, responsible enough, or I took into consideration other 50 people's more feelings than the whole collective, right? So it just,
it's difficult. It's difficult. So it's like, is it cruel? Is it not? And again, I think it depends on the perspectives. But this is why, like, for example, a lot of these financial gurus, right? If you're not the CEO, or the owner, they're like, listen, you need, like, I don't know if you heard this. They say, if you're not the owner or the CEO, there's no such thing as relying on a job now. Right? This generation, things have changed. Back in the day, like, let's say in our parents' generation, our grandparents, you were able to stay loyal to one company and stay there forever.
Yeah.
Now that happens a lot less now, because the economy, inflation, so many factors,
different factors.
Where maybe you might not stay 40 years, 30 years in one company, because it maybe 1 year it's good, but the next year it goes down and you can't work anymore.
Yeah.
So, that's why, for example, they'll say you got to shop around. You have to look out for yourself, because if something like this were to happen, depending on the perspective, maybe it's not cruel. It's just a business move, and it's necessary for the business and for other people. So I thought that was one interesting example.
Okay.
And the other one is the sports, where, again, maybe they're examples of coaches who will use cruel tactics, psychologically or physically, but they do it and I wrote it down here, because they want to foster, they want to get the peak performance of the athlete, and they want to get the last couple percent to get the best out of that athlete, so it can transfer to getting a championship, right?
Yeah, I know.
And to getting a championship, so the team can win. Now, when I heard this example, I mean, you could probably say a lot about this. I just because I want to hear what you have to say. I just want to mix it with working out.
Okay.
Because me, obviously, I'm a DPT, doctor of physical therapy, and there is this principle, whereas the stronger you get physically, the stronger and the bigger muscle mass you build, right? In the beginning, the strength and endurance gain that you get as you're working out is much bigger. But as you continue to get stronger and you get more stable and you build more endurance, the better you get. The gain you get becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's why these Olympic lifters, these people that their whole life is working out, they push. Well, because what are they trying to do? They're trying to get the last
1%.
But that last 1% makes them from great to the all-time best.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the coaches, who might have to use cruel tactics to get the athlete to get there.
Right. I think it's a very controversial view, right?
Yes.
I'll explain why. Because it's a very old school tactic, meaning not that it's not the right tactic. I do believe it's the right tactic from my own personal experience. Either way, I might be a Gen Z, but I believe it is the best tactic. Either way, it's considered old school, because nowadays, people say you got to take more in consideration people's feelings. And, there's a good part to that, right? Acknowledgement and stuff like that. But when it comes to, in this specific scenario, sports and exercise, I believe, especially when you're in that position of coaching, it is very important to do that with your players. Reason why? Because it brings out the best out of you. It's like, I'm being cruel to you, but I'm being cruel to you in a way where you have to understand that I know you're capable of something. I've seen how you play. I've seen how you can move. I know your potential. I don't think you've realized your own potential. And usually coaches are much more older than their players, right? So they have much more experience. They've been able to see more. And like, I could see that you have this potential. I need to push you more. I need you to reach that edge where you believe you can't do it anymore physically, but I need your mind to tell your body that you can. And that's when you achieve peak performance. And you can see this from all the great players, right? We look at Michael Jordan, LeBron James, you look at Tom Brady, Muhammad Ali, so many great players, right? In different sports. They all talk about how they had to reach peakness, they had to like sacrifice, right? They had to like put their body through hell. They had to be, in a sense, if they weren't being cruel to themselves, the person that was training them was being cruel to them. But they, at the end, because, once you achieve that championship or that 1% being the ultimate, once you achieve that, you're able to realize, damn, I needed to go through this to be able to, surpass that hump.
Yes.
In my life, right? So I've been able to see, obviously, personal experience through workouts and stuff like that, acknowledging that when someone is telling me something, especially if they're coaching me, like, for example, nowadays is mostly like my boxing, when I go to boxing classes and I have a coach and the coach hits me in the face telling me to wake up, for a majority of people, that might be like, whoa, like,
that's too much.
That's too much. But I would take it more as, what? This person has realized my weakness, has trying to tell me to wake up, in a sense, and realizes my potential. So I just need to push myself harder. So I believe, like you said, in those examples, cruelty is good, even if you do it to yourself. I don't know if you've been able to experience the same thing, but
interesting, very interesting. No, I've heard this perspective also from other coaches.
It's not made for everyone.
No, it's definitely not. Well, not everyone can be the top 1%. Not everyone can be the best athlete. Not also, a lot of people don't have to go through that to be happy or to like fulfill their dream or their accomplishments. But you're right. If you're trying to be the best of the best in the industry, in the sport, or maybe learning a skill or something mental, you have. Maybe you're right. You have to be cruel to yourself and like, oh, push, or have that other person be cruel to yourself. Or, yeah.
Because you can have a coach be cruel to you, understanding that he knows your potential, what you can be, but you can also be cruel to yourself. I'm sure when you were going to PT school, right, you were in a sense being cruel to yourself, but in a good way, meaning I have to study these amount of hours. I have to put myself, so it's 12 o'clock at night and let me study one more hour because I need to, I have, you know, to reach this goal. I have to reach to this certain page because if I don't, I'm going to be behind. And, you know, pressure.
Yeah.
But that cruelty in the sense that, that cruelty in the sense that you were doing to yourself made you achieve whatever you were able to achieve, which is now be a doctor.
I mean, I feel like our teachers
were more cruel than yourself.
Oh, 100%. SUNY Downstate is a very tough school.
Right.
But they did it. They said this expression in the program, and again, this is a very controversial expression, but this is what they said. They would say, "Pressure makes diamonds." Right?
I agree.
That's what they would tell us.
Physically, pressure does make diamonds.
It does?
Yes, that's what creates a diamond.
Oh, I didn't know.
Like
I never even.
I don't know much about it, but like if you study like the core of what like diamonds are made and how they're made because of a lot of pressure, and then
it just makes the diamond?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, listen,
don't quote me on it.
No, I'm taking because they would say that, and there were a lot of people who did not make it till the end because there was so much pressure from every teacher, from the exams, and just, it was so much, quote unquote, cruelty, right? But you're right, they were just trying to push us to become the best DPTs out of the program for that year.
Yeah.
So, you know, thank God I made it out.
So you became a diamond.
I was being pushed and slapped around and kicked around. I was like, oh God. But I made it out. I made it out. But yeah. But coming out of that cruelty, right? If you're trying to achieve something, happiness can come out of it. Right? Yes. Happiness can come out of it.
Yes.
So I guess here comes the $1 million question, baby. You ready? How do we become happy?
I don't know.
Okay. Podcast ended. How do we become happy or reach that emotional high or that happiness? This is a tough question because everyone.
Tough question, right?
This is very subjective. Go.
It is subjective because, objectively, happiness is the satisfaction of life, right? It's being joyful. It's reaching the feeling of being content, right? When you finally get to that point where, like, for many reasons, you could feel that. Either family, goals, pleasure, whatever the feeling is, right? I'm not a big, advocate when it comes to happiness. I don't see it as, like, super important. Maybe mostly for guys. And this is mostly, I am biased about this, maybe because of the podcasts I would hear, like Patrick David, like Andrew Tate, explaining how, not that happiness is not important, but it's not something you should technically look forward to. Meaning you can't wake up and be asking yourself, should I be feeling happy today? How can I feel happy today? How can, just putting yourself so much pressure on how to be happy, because I feel like that's the bad part of happiness, right? What you should be trying to achieve is fulfillment. How can I continue to fulfill my life ongoing, right? And one of the ways that you could do that is setting yourself goals, right? Short-term goals, long-term goals, and basically achieving them, right? If your goal is to become financially free or build a family, spend more quality time with friends, by doing all these things, right? Maintaining a healthy lifestyle, eating healthy, going out with your kids, making money, seeing how that money makes other people happy because now they get to enjoy freedom, and the freedom they have or the opportunities they have because of what you're able to provide, especially as a man, brings you fulfillment. Why? Because now you're basically, in a sense, achieving your purpose in life, or somewhat of your purpose in life, and you could see the benefits that come out of that. And therefore, that automatically makes you happy. So achieving or looking more, how can I fulfill my life with positive things and being productive is what will continuously bring me happiness in my life. That's the way I kind of see it.
That's very interesting. I think it's a truthful answer, but I think it's an answer that people are not going to want to hear.
Why?
But that's a good thing. It's controversial, and it's a good answer.
Why are they not going to want to hear?
Because...
Are you talking about men or women?
No, in general. I know that...
I'm using it as more of a male perspective.
Correct, but I think it can apply to both. I really do. Right? I think... Now, I know that maybe they target a little bit more of their own gender, Andrew Tate and Patrick Bet-David, but I think this is an answer that applies to everyone. Because what you're really saying is stop focusing so much, and you're basically saying stop overthinking, stop trying to find that motivation, stop trying to find that inner subjective emotional side, and it's more about action, discipline, and actually doing. Because when you do, it becomes like a snowball avalanche. Eventually, by default, you're going to get the result of being happy, whatever that means, because it could be a very subjective term, whatever it is. But guess what? If you're disciplined, you're doing, it becomes an avalanche, and the ball becomes bigger and bigger. And by default, you're going to see how great your life ends up. And by seeing the results, you're going to be happy without you actually thinking, how do I find happiness?
It's an automatic, yeah.
That's what you're basically saying. But the reason I said that people are not going to like it is because, you know, I don't know when was the last time you went to Barnes & Nobles, but I love going to Barnes & Nobles, as you know.
Yeah.
There's a whole section on the self-help, like how to be happy, right? People writing all their philosophy. And don't get me wrong, like it's cool to read these things, the philosophies, in my opinion.
Okay.
But there's only so much about mindset. There has to be a point where you actually have to go do. You actually have to, you're right, improve your life in these different areas. And you know, people are like, oh, do I feel happy today? Right? You know, you could wake up with a little bit of stomach pain because you ate something bad last night, and to answer your question, do I feel happy today? It's going to be no, because you don't feel well, right? You don't feel well. So you're right. Asking yourself, am I happy today? It's not a good measure to see if you're happy.
I mean, your stomach might not feel well, but your kids are going, you know, to the best schools. Your wife is living a good life. You have friends coming over later.
Yes.
Business is going well. So yeah, my stomach might hurt. I might not be happy. I don't know other words to use at the moment, but other stuff are going well. So like, you can't just narrow it down to like one thing in a sense when it comes to like the word happiness. I feel.
No, 100%. But I think it's a very realistic answer that people are going to have to be like, oh, so it's not just, and also it sounds like your answer of what makes someone happy doesn't just revolve around you, right?
Of course. No.
Being happy is the result of different aspects of my life that's affecting more than just me.
I feel like that's going to bring someone else more happiness because you're not viewing it from a selfish perspective or like, what am I doing for myself?
Yeah.
To fulfill myself and myself only. By you know, as an example, giving your kids what you couldn't have in life, right? Or your family members are seeing the productivity, seeing you improve every day, right? You're constantly reading, you're constantly, you know, acquiring knowledge and improving in different traits. I'm constantly doing business and trying to do more. I'm making a positive impact in the world. I have this charity. I have this other nonprofit charity. Like I'm making things happen. It's just what's automatically going to bring that fulfillment in life. And it's not, happiness isn't really something you're going to have to worry about because it's going to come automatically. So that's why I'm like, I see it more from obviously the male perspective, but these are just obviously, and everyone's fulfillment and happiness is going to be different. Some people are going to want to do more. Some people are going to want to do less.
Yeah.
But whatever is that what you want to do and whatever is what you want to achieve in your life and reach that goal, the higher it is, the more you're going to have to sacrifice, or more you're going to have to do. While obviously if it's lower, then the less you're going to have to do. But it just all depends where you see yourself, right? You have to, I guess, write down what are the most important things to you, what you want to achieve. And then from there, you have to see how can you get there.
Yeah. 100%. And so tell me what you think of the seven formula of happiness.
Okay. I've heard of this before.
Yeah, we've spoken about this, and I think it's similar. And I actually learned this from like a business guy. Sadly, I forgot his name. I really did. But when I watched his course on how to be happy, that he just threw in there, part of the business course that I watched, he basically said, number one, your basic needs have to be met, right? Water, food, shelter, sleep, right? You need that. Like that's like default,
yes, of course.
Baseline.
Yeah.
You got to have that.
I agree.
Right? Then number two, you got to have, because he basically says people fall into depression because there's one area or more areas of your life that have not been fulfilled. That's his whole thesis. And he says, so number one is basic needs, as I just mentioned. Number two is career / finances / financial security. The finance world, right?
This is not an order thing, right? Or
No. He just put seven. Okay. No, this is not an order. Well, actually, the basic needs is the first one, though. That is the first one.
That has to be first.
That has to be first. The third, he wrote health / physical body.
Okay.
Right? And we can also put emotional health as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
4 is family, friends, connections, and community. Number 5, autonomy, your sense of freedom. Do you feel like you have freedom in your life, right? Are you making your own decisions? 6, sense of achievement, purpose / immortal projects. Actually, that term I got from a different book, but it's the same thing.
Okay.
And last but not least, he wrote spirituality / God / being ethical, being moral, the universe, and energy. Like he was mixing a whole ton of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously not everyone is religious, not everyone is spiritual, so he was mixing, right? So he basically said if one of these areas or more are not fulfilled, that is when people fall into depression, right? They fall into depression. So you have to ask yourself, okay, do I have my basic needs? Because if you don't have your basic needs,
you can't even,
don't even then you do need to fix your situation.
Yeah, you can't look at other stuff without having the basic needs.
But even then, I've heard, but this is anecdotal, but I've heard stories of people that go to Africa, like poor countries, and people don't have the basics, but they're happy. But that could be a different,
maybe
that could be a different conversation because
that can mix in with like putting like God first in a sense.
Yes, or family
first, and like, you know what? As long as I got my family, I'll figure it out.
100%.
But that's like a mindset as well.
Correct.
It's complicated.
But we can definitely talk about that in a different podcast. Yeah. But so obviously, most of us, obviously, in non-third world countries, we have the basics. Okay, fine. Yeah. Then he says a lot of times, you might have family, you might have good friends, but you're broke. And if you're broke, you don't have money. And even he said, and a lot of people say this, money, it's not that it buys you happiness, but it can make you happier. Because obviously, you could be the billionaire, but if you have the worst health problems and you can't even enjoy a normal hot dog, let's say, or a piece of meat, because then you have diarrhea, or you're like in your room for a whole week because you have stomach pain, then you're not going to enjoy it, but you got all the money in the world, right? It has to be balanced, right? So you got to look, have you exceeded, right, in your career or in your job, because maybe you didn't go to college, right? What are you doing to earn more income so you can have more freedom, right, through your active or passive income? Have you increased your skill or your money making so you have more time now to do what you really were put on this earth to do, which you have to figure out in your own time. That's a different thing, right? Or maybe you do have money, but your body is crappy, right? And a good example is like, for example, a lot of people who work like in engineering jobs, or people who are
office jobs,
or the finance
don't
bros.
require much movement. Yeah.
They're like sitting all day. They're making $500,000 a year, but they got bad posture. They got diabetes. Maybe they're eating crappy. Right. Their blood pressure's through the roof. So you're gonna feel bad.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to figure that out. So maybe you do have a good body. You got your basics. You got money, but you have no community. You're lonely. Right. You can't make a friend. Right. Maybe it is a you problem. Maybe you don't know how to communicate, how to talk to girls, how to find a partner, or you don't have a community. And when I say community, I'm not always talking about a religious community. Maybe
a neighborhood.
A neighborhood.
Yeah.
Or are you part of a gated community? Or are you part of a nonprofit? But that's your community.
That's the people you surround yourself mostly with.
So then you have to figure out, what kind of community can I find? And today, it's so easy. It really is. Like you can go to meetup.com, so many dating, and I understand it's still hard. I get it. I
think for you it's easy.
Okay, how about this? How about for me it's easier? How about that? It's easier.
Yeah. I guess some people are missing the knowledge of that availability.
Yes.
Out there. But you also have to have the skill of being socially, gifted in a sense. You don't have to be gifted, but
so you have to work on it.
You have to work on it, right? And some people are just better at it. And I know you're great at it. I believe I'm decent or pretty good at it. But I try to view from other people's perspectives. And like when I was a shy person, or when I was shyer than now, like how it was hard. But obviously I had to eventually get out of that shell.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
There's literally like you could like, maybe you have an old friend and like, hey, can you invite 3 people to your house and I'll go and I'll just listen. And if I vibe, I'll start to talk to these people, right? Or like, there's so many ways.
It's just difficult. You know why? Because growing up, it's much easier growing up with the people that you're around with, because you grew up around them. Trust was developed. We've already known each other for years. I don't have to go through that whole process of getting to know somebody that comes from a different state or a different background and see if I could trust them and build from the bottom up in a sense again, right? While but these other ones these are people I already knew. And same thing comes with relationships. That's why people hate to start over.
Yeah, because that is the hardest part,
right? So then let's say you move this and that, now you got a different friend group, now you have to start over, and it's like, not that it's not doable. I'm sure it is. It's just definitely harder.
Well, what's the other option?
You be lonely. And then you don't fulfill that aspect of your happiness.
And then what happens? You become
depressed.
There you go, guys. So that one, autonomy, people got to feel like I have free will, like I'm making my own choices. Even though I've said previously, a lot of times we as humans, when we make decisions, it's not always out of our free will, even though a lot of times we don't realize it, though.
We don't realize it. We think it's out of our free will, but it's much more complex than that.
A lot more. I don't think this is the episode to talk about it, but it's a lot more complex.
Yeah.
But at least people have to feel it. Like, I'm making my own decisions. Like, I chose to live here, or I chose to go hang out with this person. Like, you got to feel, or I chose this career, or I chose to work here. Like, they got to feel that, right? And the last 2, a sense of achievement, their purpose,
setting goals,
and like sometimes people have to feel like, what am I doing on this earth? Like, what I'm doing on this earth, is it above me, right? Yeah. Have you ever heard of the example of the prisoner and the well of water? The story. I forgot where I heard the story, but basically there was this prisoner.
Okay.
Back in the day, this is not recent.
Okay.
And they put him to forced labor.
Okay.
So they said, okay, you see this wall? On that other side of the wall, there's a well of water. So you're gonna go here and you're gonna go like this.
Yeah.
And you're picking up water, and then that water is spraying all over the plant. So you're going to do that every day.
That's your job.
That's your job.
Okay.
So this guy that's what he did the whole day, and he got stronger and stronger. And he was thinking, man, I'm getting good at this, and you know something, I'm actually when I do this, I'm getting water and I'm planting the flowers and I'm planting the grass on the other side. So at least that grows. So he felt like I have a purpose, not just me. It's a lot bigger than
I'm
me.
doing something good. Yeah.
I'm doing something good. I mean, obviously he had to convince himself of that because he was in prison for a long time. So obviously, right? Then the story goes, again, this is just a parable. It's just a story. The story goes that at the end, when it was time for him to leave and he was finally free, and they actually allowed him to see what was on the other side of that wall with the water. When he went to the other side, there was no water, there was no grass, there was no plants. So then he killed himself because he just couldn't absorb mentally. Like, I spent, I don't know, let's say 20 years. I spent 20 years getting so good at this. And I thought for 20 years I was planting seeds and I was putting water over these plants and this grass. And I thought all this was growing. But I realized I wasted 20 years of my life and I did nothing.
Right.
I wasn't doing anything. And then he killed himself. Right. Yeah. But the whole point of it is just to show that we need to feel that we're achieving, that we are achieving our purpose, and that we're affecting more people than just me. That when I die, and they call this the Immortal Project, when I die, whatever I leave, like my legacy, right? Is it money? Is it books? Is it maybe it's a statue because I did something great? Is it a building? Did I construct something? Did I invent something? Right? Right. And that's why, like today, like if you read a book from someone who died 200 years ago, or like Aristotle, today, these philosophers, these Greek philosophers, or Socrates,
or Plato.
I'm not saying we agree with them, but I'm just saying, like, look, they left immortal things. Today, people are still studying their works or thinking about how they thought. So they left their immortal projects. So if we as a human feel this, like we're achieving that, we feel good and we won't be depressed. And last but not least is spirituality. And, you know, from a spiritual perspective, right, and I think most religions would agree with this, right? To be happy, you need to fulfill that intellectually and emotionally. You can also look at it from a secular perspective, right? But spiritually, right? When I say intellectually, it's like, okay, I'm doing what God is telling me to do, whatever religion is, Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, or other ones, right? Okay, I'm doing what, from their perspective, God has told me to do this, X, Y, and Z. I'm doing it. Intellectually, you know you're doing it. And then emotionally, you feel good that you're doing what God is telling you to do. Yeah. Or secularly, listen, I am improving in this skill. I'm helping this person or this community or my country, whatever the case is. And emotionally, I feel good about it. So yes, being happy is about fulfilling your intellectual side and your emotional side, and maybe looking at these 7 perspectives, these 7 circles of your life, and really reflecting on yourself and saying, am I fulfilling all this or not? Have I done this or not? And if you haven't, try to figure out a solution towards it. What do you think?